Welcome to the Happy Doc, the voice of fulfilled physicians. This show is about bringing inspirational, creative, successful, and happy health professionals to you. Get ready to learn how you can be a happy doctor too. What's up, guys? For our next episode, I'm really pumped to have our next guest, who is Dr. Gus W. Krucky. Before we get to the interview, I definitely want to mention some updates, some exciting things that we're working on the Happy Doc. First and foremost, for anyone who's interested in getting a little bit more involved with the page, we're going to be rolling out the next step on our page, which is the mentor groups, support groups. Essentially, if you're interested, give me an email to thehappydoc1@gmail.com. It's thehappydoc1@gmail.com. And when you email me, I'll give you more information on what the groups entail. You can be either A, a leader, or B, a participant. And the cool thing is we've already done these groups as a pilot, and it's super helpful. We had students come in and just talk about their lives, dealing with boards or dealing with school, even talking about relationships and life stuff. And it's there's more to it than that, and I'd like to get into the more nuanced stuff via email or through a conversation. But it's a great way to connect with people who really care about the work they do and want to take their happiness and joy in the work that they do to the next level. So if you're a student, if you're a med student, if you're a pre-med, if you're a resident, or if you're a doctor, this is a space where you can connect and get a little bit more involved with what we're doing here. So please check that out and send us an email. Now, to preface the conversation, I want to give you guys a couple of highlights from the conversation. Number one, Dr. Gus touches on why he went into medicine in the first place. He talks about how his family was impacted by World War II and that they went from a very poor, war-torn background to the United States, which is a very wealthy country, and it was very different. Dr. Gus talks about him wanting to utilize his empathy and the ability to be in the present moment to help individuals from all walks of life. You also learn that he has experience in multiple specialties, including internal medicine and emergency medicine, and how that plays a role in the way he practices. His tip for the listeners, and I absolutely love it, is, quote, always seek excellence, always seek truth, always live your truth, have integrity, work hard, and have some fun. And he talks about that in the conversation. And my favorite takeaway from this conversation is that we have gone from a human service model in medicine to a for-profit model, where we talk a lot about how we're going to fund things, a lot about legal issues, a lot about where's the money going to be generated for stuff. But what about helping people? What about the human-based way of thinking about things? And in order for us to fight that, we need to come together as a community, fight for quality experiences with our patients. And the question we pose to you is, how might we come together across specialty lines to help build a brighter future? These are all things we talk about in this conversation with Dr. Gus W. Krucky. Enjoy the conversation. Hello, everyone. This is Taylor, and this is another episode of the Happy Doc. I'm really excited to have our next guest, Dr. Gus W. Krucky, who completed his medical education at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas. He's board certified in two fields, internal medicine and emergency medicine, and he has special interests in HIV and palliative care. He was also he was a recipient of the Leonard Tao Humanism in Medicine Award. I would definitely we can definitely touch on that as well. Dr. Gus, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hello, everybody. It's great to talk to you.
Awesome. And it's great to have you on today. And so one question I love to start out with is, why did you go into medicine in the first place?
I think that for me, there weren't many options. I knew that I wanted to do something that was going to make a difference. So being kind of a ham, I thought I needed to be either a preacher or I needed to be a doctor. And as it turns out, going into medicine, I got to be both, because we preach every day, right? To each other, to our patients, It's just what we do. Our job is to convince other people how to have a healthy life.
Sure.
And so I got to be both.
Now, was there a moment that kind of like sparked you, or maybe an influential person in your life, or something that kind of said, medicine is the thing for me?
I think that, like many of us, we're deeply formed by our roots. And childhood was one of a similar experience for me as it is for many, living with a mother who came from a family of missionaries from the Netherlands. At the time of the Second World War, they were in Indonesia. And when the Japanese attacked the islands in World War II, they were placed in concentration camps. And so I have a whole family that has endured a very difficult time in world history and had to learn how to recover from that trauma and somehow exist in a world without being totally screwed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you felt like that was, a way you could give back was to help heal others through any difficulties they were experiencing?
Yeah, I think that what informed me early on in life is that a great many people live in a world of silent suffering, and our ability to connect, our ability to discover the pain in others that they wish not to reveal to the world, or anybody else for that matter, enables us to connect, be human, and to make a difference. And so I felt like I had that empathic nature to be able to make that connection. And I needed something on top of that, a scientific foundation, a medical foundation, to be able to make the difference that I wanted to make.
Wow. I mean, that was a very impactful story you just gave. And I really wanted to touch on the aspect you're talking about silent sufferers. And maybe we can talk about that, even later in the conversation a little bit. But can you touch on what do you mean by silent sufferers, and how might that be even something we see in the medical world?
The kinds of individuals that have crossed my path in medicine, because I happened to be educated in the mid and late 80s and started my work as a physician mid to late 90s and early 2000s, was the AIDS epidemic. And I, as a very young man, came into a world of medicine where individuals were being admitted while we were on call, mostly at that time gay men, and they were dying. And we had little or no treatment early on. And I saw that not only was there an incredible amount of suffering, physical suffering, but the suffering of the individuals for having been discarded by society because they were gay, or perhaps an IV drug abuser, perhaps seen in a way that was very negative socially. And being able to connect with individuals who were experiencing this was, to me, a real treasure. I think it didn't drag me down. It gave me the energy, the ideas, the power to be able to move forward and use that experience to make a difference.
Wow. That's incredible. And, in any situation, there's a few ways you can take it. And, you're talking about encountering these patients with AIDS, right? And you could have said, this is very disheartening. I'm not sure what to do here. But it sounds like you were taking it the other way, where it was a time for you had this opportunity to try to help this population, and, use your knowledge to do something about it. And of course, you do have a lot of work, specializing in HIV. And was this kind of the start of all of that?
I think so. It is not something that I, in medical school or as an intern, really thought that, oh, this is an area where I'm going to have a passion. As with many of us, life falls in our lap. And this experience was open to me. People were coming to me, with a great deal of pain, both physically, mentally, spiritually. And I decided to just dive in. I can't say that I did it really well at every moment on that journey, but I certainly did try to be the kind of doctor that an individual could say they not only respected, but they really loved too. And so opening your heart in such a way with people that allows you to connect, that allows you to love them without diminishing or depleting your own energy source is a very difficult thing. It's a fine line. And I'm not sure that I always walked it well, but, I did my best.
How do you think you do that? I mean, out of curiosity, I don't know if you've put it into words, but how does someone, we call it compassion, right? But how does someone actually practice towing that line of, protecting yourself, but also giving to your patient, that love and appreciation that they need?
I think that falls into the realm of what I call the art of the sacred. There is a thread, I think, that connects all of us, that connects all living things, a deep well of energy, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, that is available to us if we remain open to it. And in the midst of our suffering, in the midst of the suffering of others, it's important not to become attached to it in such a way that we feel that it must not be. The must not be part of it is the ego saying, this can't be happening. I don't want it to happen. I'm going to force it not to happen. That's how we become discouraged. That's how we end up in a situation where we're having a war in life. It is okay to rage against an injustice. It's okay to dive into a tragedy and provide support. But I think that if we become too attached to the outcome rather than just living in the process, living in the moment of caring, then we miss the whole body of wisdom and access to the universe that you can get when you're fully just there. I'm not sure if that's the way
No. So
I articulated it before.
And I guess to kind of summarize what you're saying is it's not to get lost in what you were saying, like the outcome of things, like attaching yourself to a specific result, but just being there with them as much as you can to help them the best you can in the moment. And that's a way to it's protecting yourself because you're not attaching yourself to a specific result, but you just want to do the best for them. I think that's a great way of putting it. And so, I just to discuss, your position a little bit, you went into internal medicine and then you're double board certified also in emergency medicine. Is that correct?
Correct. So in the day, there were emergency medicine residency programs, but emergency medicine is our most youthful specialty, at least large specialty, and hasn't really been around that long in the field of medicine. So as I was finishing internal medicine, I then did a chief year. So I was an instructor as faculty at UTMB, and they were opening a new emergency department / trauma center. And I guess bright, shiny things are attractive to me. And I thought I might do pulmonary critical care, but it just felt exciting to me. And I dove into it after being asked to join them. And during my time there, I ran Lifelight in Galveston at UTMB when they had Lifelight there, was involved with the pre-hospital folks, our paramedic EMTs / nurses, amazing people who continue to do their work in aeroflight medicine. And so I had this amazing experience, and it was a possibility for me to, as a leader in that area, to apply to grandfather in to emergency medicine. So after a period of time, a number of years, I was able to sit for the written and the oral boards like everybody else who does emergency medicine. And so I've kept up with that, and have greatly enjoyed everything that I've done, both internal medicine and emergency medicine. The emergency medicine, probably along with the internal medicine, informed me as I moved to John Peter Smith in Fort Worth and worked primarily in the ICU for a number of years. And then ultimately I came to Houston, working for almost 13 or 14 years with HIV patients in an urgent care kind of setting. And only recently, in the last few years, have I gone back to my roots in internal medicine, teaching primarily on the inpatient side, I guess is what nowadays they call a hospitalist. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so I guess I find very interesting about all of this is, usually when I see or look at the the accreditations of a physician I'm speaking to, they're usually like in one field, right? Whereas with you, you have such a wide breadth of practice. Now, how do you think, what are some advantages that you think you have when it comes to, I'm sure scope is going to be a big thing. You have a good sense of the scope of everything, but how do you think that, you being informed from the emergency medicine side and the medicine side, and also with these different specialties, how do you think that impacts your praxis versus someone who might not have really experienced these other fields?
Well, I think the important thing is, in a world of fake news, is credibility, right? I think that we have a lot of folks who claim expertise in certain areas. I'm not talking about physicians who are qualified in their areas of expertise, but mainly non-physician folks who somehow feel that a certain amount of information allows them to have an opinion in an area which they're really not qualified. So having taken care of patients in the trenches, in internal medicine, emergency medicine, on the inpatient side, the outpatient side, the urgent care setting, HIV patients, infusions, procedures. I've seen and practiced in all of these areas, and I've tried my best to be very, very good at it. So I can sit at the table with any administrator or any group of administrators and perhaps physician leaders and have a unique understanding of how medicine works in the United States today. I think the only area that I've never spent a lot of time in is in the operating room. And that's, a whole new world, a whole different world. And I wouldn't claim to have an area of expertise or knowledge in how that aspect of medicine works. But about the rest of it, I think I get to have a seat at the table.
That's amazing. I love that. And yeah, I mean, no one, there's a lot of people that make claims about something, but you've lived it. And that's, I guess, a very different experience for sure. So what do you think, just out of curiosity from my level, what do you think is advice maybe you would have given a younger self as a student or as a resident? What's something that like students now listening in could enact to allow them to be the best physician or just the best human being in the practice of medicine that they could be?
I think that what I worry about with young folks today is the unfortunate attachment to an educational system that is defined ahead of time for them. By that, I mean ACGME guidelines. You got to meet this goal. You got to meet that goal. You got to do well on step 1 and step 2. It's all about the test taking, checking off the boxes. And there is certainly credibility to the notion that when we're teaching, we want students, learners to be proficient in every aspect of medical training. And for this, guidelines are helpful, and standardized testing is to some degree helpful. But I think I see students focusing very heavily on their success in the world of competition, competing in step 1, step 2, competing for residency positions, having that score, these letters, these recommendations that allow them to be quote unquote successful, never really sometimes living in the moment and living their success and enjoying it while they're in it. And I think that they miss the lion's share of the experiences in the training process that could be life-changing for them, because they're all wrapped up in the competition.
Sure. So what, that's, kind of your apprehensions about what students are seeing now. So what impresses you, or what do you find is impressive when you see a student that does something great? What excites you when you see, what are some examples of something that excites you as a student and when you see it in a student?
So I have the luxury and the privilege of teaching students, interns, residents, fellows. And what really excites me is a learner who is just absolutely voraciously interested in the moment, wanting to learn about a patient, wanting to learn about what's happening physically, physiologically with a patient, and then also is able to access the big picture. How is this patient suffering? How can we help? And to do it without any regard for when they're going to end up going home that day. It's a total investment in following an illness from the beginning to the end. And I think we've created in medicine now the idea that it must be shift work. And patients don't live by shifts. People don't live by shifts. And perhaps there's an element of corporate medicine that is infused or perhaps infected the way that we teach the practice of medicine, being unattached to how the day is unfolding, not having to look at your watch every 5 minutes, and just enjoying taking care of patients is very exciting to me, and allows me to also spend the time in the moment with them.
Sure. And I really loved what you said there. And I would want to echo and just add, I've had a very short career. I've been an intern for 4 months. But I would say the times that my day goes by faster, and when I find a lot of joy in it and I can come home and talk to a family or a friend about my day, generally happens when I have genuine interactions with patients. And I'm not necessarily always thinking, as long as my thought is about how can I help this person, and then I just kind of dig into their story and try to unwind kind of what's going on and go in a little bit further. That's when I learn something new that, one, the team's gonna, might want to know about, or two, it just gets me excited to know the person. And then I can worry about the medications and the interactions and those things. But understanding that human being for a little bit is something that really, that is viscerally pleasing. I'm not looking at the clock. It's just something I'm enjoying in that moment, like you were saying. And to add to that also, I think, when you dig in, you might unearth, and this, I'm sure, is you unearth information that they might not have told someone if you just take a little bit more time to kind of pull from them. Do you have any examples of that? Maybe people had some cursory histories, and then you just took a little bit more time and you got something extra you wouldn't even realize?
I think that what students tell me that they learn the most from me is not that I'm the smartest guy in the room who possesses each and every fact, and throws out the latest paper. And maybe I could do that to some degree, but there are certainly people who are better than I am. I think what I get, the feedback that I get is we talk about a patient a little bit in the hallway, but not a lot. I prefer to walk into the room, introduce the team, and then discuss with the patient that I'm there to teach as well and get their permission. And we talk about what's happening at the bedside. And as the story unfolds at the bedside, the patients generally just open up in a trusting way that allows us to access the parts of their history and even observations, physical exam observations, just by standing there and then reaching out and touching the patient in the art and practice of medicine that makes that physical connection. And I think that learners who work with me are excited about the fact that those interactions are sacred, that they are touching, that they are human, and that they are deeply empathic. Learning how to make that connection with a patient is an art, and it can only be taught at the bedside. So I think that that's one of the most enjoyable parts of teaching medicine, is watching young people suddenly get it. The light bulb goes on. Oh my God, that's how you practice medicine. It was so hard going through the first and second year making this information database, but this is what it really is. And that's exciting for me when I see that transformation.
Sure. And that's awesome. And I can see why you won that humanistic award, because what you're talking about is this very human based care. And I think that's, and we should touch on this too now, is I think that's a lot where the burnout is coming from, and exhaustion that people are getting is, when they're doing almost like this cookie cutter quick fix. I don't even know what to call it, but when you lose the humanistic side of your care and you start to just look at numbers or data, would you agree? Or what do you think is causing burnout in so many people? I know it's a tough question, by the way.
It is a tough question, but I think there's an answer. And the answer is that, our country is a very wealthy country. And it's no secret that we value people who have done well in life. We value money. We value wealth. Look at the people who are our idols. And something happened to the practice of medicine from the 1970s on. I think since I was there for it, I saw it transform from a profession that I thought was largely directed towards caring for people and for establishing and encouraging scientific excellence to a profit industry. And the main thing you'll hear around a boardroom table today, even among physicians, is the money, the billing, the activity of the organization to make it more efficient. Rarely does somebody bring up the topic that the way physicians are feeling in their practices is increasingly frustrating. Why is that frustrating? Well, when the goal becomes something other than what you went into medicine for, we all want to be financially secure. But the use of the sacred art of medicine to make others wealthy in our economy, people who never see patients, with innovations that probably aren't needed, the cost of pharmaceuticals, the cost of durable medical equipment, the increasingly large middle management layer that it was required to establish a for-profit industry has, I think, infected the practice of medicine in a way that may take us decades to recover from, if ever. Mm-hmm. So I think physicians are not feeling burned out. I think they're feeling abused. When we had a time in medicine where I could spend 30 minutes with a new patient, let's say newly diagnosed HIV/AIDS, It might take 30 minutes or an hour for a brand new patient to establish a relationship, a connection, and to decide on a regimen, a therapeutic regimen, and a plan with the patient to move forward that's effective and perhaps ensures that they're going to come back and stay healthy for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Then they tell you, no, you can't do that 45 minutes anymore. The pencil pushers tell you now that's 20 minutes. Now that's 15 minutes. And you don't even have time to make these connections anymore or to think clearly from patient to patient about a differential diagnosis and simply contemplate for a moment what might be the best course of action. This is why industry prefers guidelines. Guidelines were never meant to be recipe books for the practice of medicine. Medicine is not a cookbook. And the corporatization of medicine is going to collapse. It's going to collapse because individuals who are truly interested in the art and science of medicine are going to stop doing it. And there will be people who are less qualified, and we will have terrible outcomes. And I think that this train is going too fast, and I think it's headed towards a bridge that's fallen into the river. So whether we choose as a profession to address this and to push back in a way that returns to the physician control of the physician-patient relationship in such a way that we have the time to do what we need to do, then we will continue on this track.
Sure. Wow. I mean, first off, that was a beautifully stated answer. I'm fascinated by it for many reasons. Have you actually interviewed another guest? Have you heard of Venu and Vinay Julapalli? They started the Health 3.0 movement. Do you know what that is?
Yes, I heard about that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a nice almost solution, if anything, to the problem, so to speak, where we take, like what you talked about, this evidence-based, more cookie-cutter cookbook medicine, but you bring back the individualized and unique process that we do. But I do want to touch on what you're talking about. When you're talking about cost, for example, you were saying that they're trying to limit, the cost by having these 20-minute visits, you see more patients, et cetera, et cetera. But I would also pose that by rushing through patients, you're going to have way more readmissions or people getting sick, like you're talking about, which in the long run is much more costly than just fixing the core issue or whatever the case may be, whatever that patient needs in that moment. If you rush it, you're not solving the problem, and then they will keep utilizing the system. So, I mean, if you're talking about cost utilization, having good quality care that isn't rushed might even be more cost effective. Anyways, I'm just saying.
Right.
And I'm sure you're with me. So what do you think it's going to take for, what do you think the problem is, or what do you think it's going to take for us to kind of bring things back to, quote, the glory days, or how can we, put that on ourselves to start to build out something better than what it is now, even on the students level? Or do you have any ideas?
I think that the best way for the physician community in this country to move forward is to join together. And I use the word union not in the sense of our understanding of organized industry, but the unionization of physicians into a powerful entity as one, rather than many separate specialties who advocate for themselves, needs to redirect to the fundamental ethical and moral foundations of what we do. We have to join together all of the specialties. In fact, we have to join with our partners in nursing. We have to join with our partners who are advanced practice providers, collectively saying and pushing back in a way that is intelligent, compassionate, and also effective. So we will not achieve a good by being angry and unhappy in this endeavor. I think we're going to have to persuade America that we're right. And you know what? In the patient room, in the hospital room, patients know we're right. Voters know we're right. And I think that the correct and most potentially wonderful advocacy is going to occur when we're able to tap into that trust that we truly do have with our patients, I think still, and somehow connect with them in a way that is political, that moves the country in a different direction. I think that that's certainly a very hopeful view, but I choose to consider that rather than the alternative.
Sure. No, and I think that's extremely powerful, and it's a fantastic idea. And I'm wondering what resources may or may not already be out there. If not, I mean, to you and to the listeners, what form of group can we start to form to come together as a whole? I mean, the great thing now with 21st century technology, this is 2017, we have never been more able to communicate instantly through a widespread medium to large groups of people, and to have a platform or some way to communicate is something that is extremely powerful. And so I'm with you, and I think if we can find a way to have a clear message that is agreed upon by the whole, and I guess the message is whatever we need to do to make sure we can take care of patients effectively, responsibly, with the most scientifically backed data, and being able to help them, obviously is the way to do it. But that's a very intelligent response. So I would like to sway the conversation, move the conversation a little bit more about you. Can you tell me of a time that was maybe extremely challenging, something that was extremely challenging in your career, and how you overcame it? Something maybe you learned from that experience. Okay. I know there's many, by the way.
I think that the largest challenge for me personally, and I don't think I've ever spoken about this publicly, is when I am in a clinical situation as a leader, when I've been a vice chairman of a department of medicine, or chairing a committee, or in a position where I'm trying to make a difference, and the parties sitting around the table truly aren't fully invested in the patient. They're invested in how much space they have, how much office space they have, how much their political connections are with the board, their sense of power, their ability to climb the ladder, and often at the expense of a patient. It is heartbreaking when you see physician leaders and nurse leaders who are not invested realistically in anybody but themselves. And you know that there are a series of events that need to unfold to improve the quality, the empathy, the compassion, and the way that the care is delivered in that particular environment. And for some reason, politically, it's just not going to happen. And that's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And I had to learn that being attached to the outcome in that situation is much like it is at the bedside when somebody's critically ill, that I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm not God. I'm not going to know that this patient with sepsis who has ARDS, who's intubated and is on pressors, how that's going to turn out. I'm hoping for the best. I'm giving it 100%. And I'm living in the moment, caring for that individual, understanding that it might end well and that it might not. So I had to somehow transition the wisdom that I had at the bedside to the wisdom that I needed to have in the boardroom. And I'm not sure that I'm there yet. I think I can be very passionate. And when I see something that clearly is unjust, it is difficult for me not to be the person who points it out, sometimes in a very uncomfortable way. We have to be able to do that in medicine. We have to be able to tell the truth. And sometimes it's going to be unpleasant. Sadly, in the world of corporate medicine today, you can be labeled disruptive and unwell, perhaps. Oh, this person's stirring the pot. Must be something wrong with them. This person is disruptive, maybe even unwell. Let's refer them to the wellness committee. And thus, a Stasi reporting culture that is essentially there to establish corporate behavioral compliance. That's the really sad part of medicine right now. And I think that's what I'm learning to rise above.
Sure. And you talked about a few like topics that are big things that we could discuss for hours, honestly. One is truth, right? And like truth can be, quote, relative depending on your position, but truth, right, for all intents and purposes, is what is of reflection of reality, right? And so sometimes people are so like stuck in their heads or perceiving that their truths are correct when you say your truth, which might be closer to reality, especially given your experience. It's disruptive, right? Because people live in their kind of silos or whatever they're doing. And if you say something that's a little bit off of, whatever trajectory they're on, this is another theme we're talking about, which is attachment. If they're attached to their current trajectory, if you say something that's off of that, that kind of stirs up the pot, so to speak. So it's interesting. And I think a big theme that, I'm even getting out of this conversation that we could, I definitely want to highlight is attachment. If you become so attached to your current trajectory that it doesn't reflect the reality or improving or evolution of whatever we're doing, maybe you need to take a step back and unattach from that. I mean, that's a big point. And I think the vulnerability aspects of what you're talking about, I think, unfortunately, for some reason, especially in medical culture, I notice this a lot. There's a lot of people that are fearful of saying what they think out of, what they truly think, out of a sense of, I don't know, not wanting to stick their neck out and looking like what you're saying as disruptive. There's kind of like this internal sense from a lot of people. And I applaud you, honestly, for your ability to do that in even understanding that you might be reported or looked down upon. I think there's a lot of, some of the most amazing people also have to stick their neck out a little bit and go for those things, because that's how we evolve as a society or as a structure, whatever we're doing in any field. So that's amazing. And I want to highlight again this to the listeners, what is the reality of the situation? How can you make things better? I think this is a great conversation in terms of all of that. To flip it around, we talked about challenges. What is something that gets you excited? What's a recent happy story you have in medicine that kind of reignited your passion?
I think that the most exciting things for me in medicine are the expressions of joy from patients and students and interns and residents when we're caring for patients. And this is where we got to throw out the church lady mentality of medicine. We have to not be inappropriate, but you can have some humor in life. You can run your finger through your hair and say, oh my God, I'm so fabulous today. And have everybody laughing about the fact that you just made the diagnosis of adrenal insufficiency, a very subtle diagnosis. Oh my God, you're so good. And to have the patient go, you're so smart. And, and to have everybody enjoying the moment. I think that's the meat and the potatoes of practicing medicine and being joyful about what you do. It doesn't have to be morose and and so sacred, like the quietness inside of a church. It can be a little loud, a little messy, and fun, and sometimes a little irreverent too, such that we tap into the life of medicine, not just what somebody's view of what is politically correct.
Yeah, you actually reminded me of a situation that happened while I was on my medicine month. I haven't revealed this, but it's kind of funny. So a patient was in the room and he was playing music, and it was like had this really good beat. It was like
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
it was going. And so I go in, and it's right in the morning, and I'm listening to music, and I actually start dancing a little bit. So I'm like I didn't even say a word. I didn't even say any words. I just started dancing in the room, and then he started laughing and like giggling or whatever. And he's like, "Wait, are you my doctor?" And then because it kind of breaks the professional or serious like idea or construct of what we have a doctor to be. And then, but anyways, we had a good interaction. But later, when we were rounding as a group and as a team, we all came in as a group, and he could not stop like smiling and laughing at me as I came in. But no, obviously no one else in the team knew that interaction happened. So I couldn't, like the whole time I couldn't look at the patient in the face, because every time I'd look, I'd start laughing. And it was a really funny moment. But anyways, yeah, so that, there's definitely some good times, but it's interesting, right? Because the only reason that is funny is because we generally put on a very professional front. Well, it's not a front. You want to be professional, but we put on a professional, like we create a professional space. And so by breaking it, it's almost like this unusual thing. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I'm in front of students and I'm teaching medical ethics, if you will, or another course, and we're talking about professionalism, I think that some of the folks who live in the ivory tower and whom I consider the church ladies of medicine, well, isn't that special? Oh my God, that's sinful. I think maybe we have to certainly not break down the kinds of boundaries that keep patients safe and keep us safe.
Sure.
In the context of the human relationship and the human physician relationship. But what I'm talking about are the things that sometimes tamp down people's joy, and the behaviors that are considered truly professional that perhaps inhibit the way that we might connect with not only our patients, but with one another. I think that we have to be careful, correct? People have sensibilities, and we live in a world where, I think we have to certainly be very cognizant of all of those things. But it doesn't mean that we can't have joy, and we can't have humor, and we can't have a sense of irony about some of the things that happen in our lives.
Sure. Wow. That's amazing. So I think we're ramping down the conversation. There's a few questions I'd love to just run by you here really quick. Who inspires you and why?
Who inspires me? I think that the greatest inspiration that I've had in the practice of medicine has come from individuals who were not physicians. I was uniquely inspired by working in nurses in the ICU and in the ER. They taught me many of the skills that, or helped me sharpen the skills that I use at the bedside to connect with patients. And when I think back on my whole career, I have maybe 2 or 3 physicians that I hold as, sacred in my mind. These guys were just amazing in every way. And that would be the typical answer. But I think the atypical answer for me are the other hand and more of folks who I even stay connected with on Facebook years after I've worked with them, with the funny antics and the stuff that made life great when I was working 80, 100-hour weeks or worse in the days when training was a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the people that I look to. The people, not the people with titles, the people who walk the walk, the people who were out there in the trenches giving it all, not worried about the fact that they weren't out there making $250,000 a year. They were happy doing what they were doing. And sure, we'd all like to make more money, but they were happy doing what they were doing in the moment to take care of people. And they invested their lives in it and they sacrificed for it. Those are the people I admire. Those are the people that inspire me.
Wow. Amazing. What is a tip that you'd like to leave to the listeners today?
The tip, always seek excellence, always seek truth, always live your truth, have integrity, work hard, and have some fun.
I love it. Amazing. Awesome. And I think that's pretty much it for this conversation. Was there anything you felt like you wanted to discuss or bring up, or is there any way that listeners could kind of come back and reach out to you?
So the listeners can reach out to me through my email, gus.krucke, KRUCKE, @uth.tmc.edu. And they can do that. And I just feel very fortunate to have had a conversation with you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you're definitely a well of wisdom. I think someone who has gone through such a wide breadth of specialties and experiences, and also definitely I get a sense that you are very passionate about the work that you do. It's definitely great to have some time with you and learn from you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, take care, and thanks again.
All right. Good to talk to you.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we want you to definitely subscribe to our social media channels. Check out The Happy Doc on Facebook, iTunes, Twitter, and Instagram. Please like, subscribe, share, and send us feedback. And please check out the website, www.thehappydoc.com. Again, we hope you enjoyed The Happy Doc, the voice of fulfilled physicians. Peace out.